Listening to the Hometown Losers, the St. Louis Sports Podcast, with Josh, Adam, and OJ.
Hey everybody, welcome back here to the Hometown Losers Podcast. This is session number 54, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, and Adam and OJ. Gentlemen, how are we doing today?
I'm doing great. Glad to be here. How are you doing, OJ?
I'm also doing great. Finally ready for some more baseball to get started up tomorrow.
Yeah.
I've missed it these last few days because I didn't watch the All-Star game because I don't really give a shit about it.
No,
right, same. I was going to say the American League usually wins anyway, so
something weird about that.
They did this time around as well. So, and let's face it, the home run derby is not what it used to be, and the singer was drunk. So the anthem singer was drunk. So sounds like it was a real mess.
Did you guys actually
apparently
listen
the only
to
way
anthem?
to deal with this anymore is to be drunk.
So actually, I did. So my girlfriend wanted me to listen to it. So I listened to her singing the national anthem, and my girlfriend thought, "Oh, she's doing it on purpose. It's a publicity stunt." And I kind of leaned towards that also, but I'm like, well, let's see what she sounds like live. So we found a live recording of her singing. She's just a bad singer, like amateur all around. No, straight up. If you listen to her live, find her on a live concert on YouTube. There's a few of them. And then compare that to the same song from the same one that's been doctored by the studio. You'll see how much work they have to do to make her sound good in post. So my point is, she is a bad singer. And if she was like blackout drunk, I could absolutely see that be real. So
there you go.
It's funny. So I had it because obviously I didn't watch it. So I just went on YouTube and watched the performance, and I'm like, okay, and honestly, I wasn't like, this is like horrendous. It was pretty bad, but it wasn't horrendous. It's like,
it was horrendous to
pretty
me. I don't know. It was offensive to me.
I've heard worse though. I've heard people
not that this should be a big
like,
topic of us or whatever, but I will tell you, Game 5 of the World Series in 2006, I was there, and it was Billy Ray Cyrus sang the national anthem. Oh, God, it was terrible.
I did not see that one.
Just absolutely god awful.
Was that the one? Was that the one consensus worst before this one?
Well, yeah, this one's worse. I don't think he was drunk.
Probably.
Maybe it would have been better if I was drunk.
I don't know, guys. Like, I saw it on ESPN. I can't remember it, but it was an African American man that was singing, and he forgot the words to it.
Oh,
and
no.
He literally goes like, he's singing it, and then he like was trying to, I guess, like play it off to the crowd, and he literally in the middle of the song like stops singing and he just goes, "Uh-oh," and everyone just kind of laughs with him because they don't know what else like to do because he's just like, "Uh-oh," I forgot the lyrics.
Uh-oh.
That was like
lyrics,
please, not top 10 for.
You know what he should have done?
Not good.
He should have just put his mic in the air at the crowd like he was meant to sing it. Sing along. Turn it into a song.
Sing along, everybody.
That would be the right thing to do. Come on, everybody, sing along. You know the words.
There was
put the mic in
I remember. This was before. Definitely not on YouTube because this was like when when I just got to college. Apparently, there was a young kid that was like the younger sister of like a football player or whatever, and it was like homecoming. So they talked her into doing the national anthem, but she got like stage fright, and so like halfway through it, she kind of locked up. So she didn't know what to do. So she faked a heart attack. And she's like, she was like 11 years old. She like grabs on their chest and like her arms are like falls down. So everyone's like, oh my God, is she okay? But it's just like, she's 11 years old having a heart attack. Like, I mean, it could probably happen, I guess. But it was just funny because like she talked about that. And I think I read about that in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch or something like that. Just like I guess that's one way to play it off.
Yeah, no shit.
I think Fergie at the NBA All-Star game or whatever.
Yeah, Fergie.
yeah.
That would
gotta
be
be
wild. Yeah, that by far takes the cake, I think, as far as one of the most bizarre national anthems for sure.
Another person they had to do a lot of work to make sound good.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, let's transition here and actually talk about some baseball rather than the national anthem.
Well, it's part of baseball, so
yeah, that is true.
Yeah.
It is the pastime for sure.
I was gonna say,
all right,
there
guys.
you
Go ahead.
And I did my research, so I felt like I needed to share that. So
go.
Yeah, absolutely. Did more research than I did for sure.
There you go. But
all
I
right,
guess
guys,
speaking of baseball, we have some Cardinals things to talk about, eh?
Yes, sir. So the Cardinals are above 500, ladies and gentlemen. They are 50-46. That is 17-12 since last session. They are now second in the NL Central. Actually, they were second in the NL Central since our last session. But they are only 4.5 games back behind Milwaukee. That is 2 games better. Before last session, they were 6.5. We are now fifth in the National League, guys. Moving up from the seventh position last session, we are 12 games behind Philly, which is just 1 game better. But we are 12th in the MLB as well, which is 2 positions better than last session. And again, only 12 games behind Philly, who Philly is in the lead at the MLB. We have gained two games since last session. But the biggest one is, guys, we are half game ahead of the last wild card spot in the NL, and we moved up 2 positions. Like, got to give it to the Cardinals. They have turned this around a little bit, and it helps that the NL sucks this year. But
I'm looking at the Brewers. They were 3-7 in their last 10.
I know, dude. They have just struggled, and that's what we need. We need the classic Milwaukee collapse. You know what I mean? That's what we need.
If they continue on the path that they are on, we will eventually catch them. So keep it up.
Yeah, 100%. That's what we need at this point, right? So it's been interesting for sure, but I do feel like there are times where this team looks very good, and there's times where it's just kind of head scratching for me. But Adam, I'm going to start with you. What's your thoughts so far? Like, again, with the kind of resurgence we've seen here, and now that we're about above 500.
I mean, I'm not really surprised because, first of all, baseball is very streaky, and we've seen this happen before, where it's like we're doing really shitty, and then we go on these streaks for a while, and they breathe some life back into the team. It'll be interesting though, because now that we're at the halfway point, so to speak, we're at the break. What are they going to do in the second half? You know what I mean? Can they keep this going? That's always the question: is what do we expect to see in the second half? And honestly, I'm optimistic.
Yeah, I think so as well. I mean, to your point, like, baseball is a very just streaky sport, and teams can get very hot at the right times. And
it's all about
you look at the Cardinals in 2006, 2011. We can definitely do that.
The fact that we're above 500 now and we're playing above 500 is great to see. So, so basically, I'm going back to the point where you talked about, like, the last time we spoke about this topic. It's hard to believe it's been a month. I know we've had a lot going on or whatever.
Yeah.
But the fact is that a month later, we're still talking about the Cardinals are still playing pretty decent, all things considered. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because it definitely could have been the opposite way. We could have gone 12-17. You know what I mean, or worse. So yeah.
But the fact is that we're going. We're right now 50-46 record. So yeah.
Yep.
So overall, I'm optimistic. I think that. That's what the season's all about. It's a mix of the victories and the setbacks, but it's going to test our, resilience. But overall, I think that they've shown that there is some depth and determination there. And I think that, that we've stepped up at the crucial moments, and they're definitely keeping the postseason hopes alive, at least at this point. So, there's definitely some areas needing improvement for sure.
Right. And that's really all you can ask at this point, is just to be in striking distance at this point of the year.
The offense has been relatively steady recently, which has been good in my opinion. It's been better for sure, because it feels like our bats were really cold for a while, but I think that we've seen, that kind of step up a little bit. I think obviously pitching still is an area of improvement. But yeah, I'm gonna have to look at the schedule too to see what it looks like coming up the next
coming down the
after the break
stretch.
or whatever. Yeah, I'm gonna have to come up to see who are all facing. It'll be interesting to see. So let's just say I hope we face the Cubs a bunch because they've fallen apart.
Yeah, and we definitely need some wins against Milwaukee, so it'd be good to play against
Yeah,
them
I'm
and
looking to
get some
see. I
wins.
think we have at least one series against Milwaukee, two series against Milwaukee. I'm checking to see. I think at least two series against Milwaukee for sure in the second half. So that would be interesting to see for sure. Hopefully, hopefully we fare well there because that will help, either really help make or break this for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. OJ, what's your thoughts here? Obviously, a little bit more. You're more optimistic, I think, than Adam and myself. So, what's your thoughts here?
So, they obviously had a devastatingly bad first month and almost a half. But then since May 12th, they now have had, at this point, it's the second best record in MLB. They've had since May 12th, which is, they're starting to call it the Mother's Day Miracle. It's the day that Ollie Marmol went ahead and got himself tossed in that game. They're about to get swept by the Brewers again. Ollie goes and gets himself tossed. They come back and win. And then next thing you know, they put up the best record, second best record in baseball. So, yeah, pretty, that would seem to be the point where everything turned for them. And I also think they hit the brake at the right time because their pitching was starting to collapse a little bit, in my opinion. Like you said, sometimes some games they get blown out. That's because they got a few guys in the rotation there that are they really have some bust potential on any given night. And if they don't have it, they don't have it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. They've been largely good, but every once in a while you get just a clunker. We kind of got a cluster of them there at the end, so it might be good for them to kind of take a break mentally, if nothing else.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the biggest thing about it is like trying to stay consistent in baseball is very hard because everyone is obviously trying to do the exact opposite and get you off your rhythm, off your game. It's to me, that's where I think we really thought coming into the season that what was going to be kind of make and break of the Cardinals was the pitching, right? And if we can consistently if we can consistently hold teams to three runs or less, I think we have a very good shot because their offense can one swing of the bat can change everything on both sides, obviously. But it's trying to stay consistent, and obviously the biggest thing is health, right? Can we stay healthy? Can we continue to make sure that we don't have people going down? If Sonny Gray goes down at this point, or if we have a combination of two of our stars going down, do we really have anybody in the backfield? That's where the depth, comes into play, which I don't think we have at this point. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, Andre Palante's been doing well, filling in that fifth starter spot, and he's been one of the stronger performers of late out of the staff. So, I mean, you can't bump him, but it still might be nice to bring in another starting pitcher because somebody else is probably going to get hurt at some point. So, it might make sense. Just.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's definitely going to be interesting, especially when we come to talking about the trade deadline, which we'll get to in a little bit. Well, let's actually head to the draft and talk about that since the MLB draft has happened and all 20 freaking rounds of the draft happened. Yeah. But we definitely need to talk about the first pick here, or not the first pick, but it is our first pick. It was the seventh pick in the first round, JJ Weatherholt, excuse me. OJ, what's your thoughts on Weatherholt here? Or actually, you know what? Hold on. I got a little bit of a bio, and then I'll go into it. So Weatherholt here, he's a shortstop out of West Virginia. He bats left, throws right. He is a fourth-year junior, meaning he's going to go into his senior year. What prospects have him, or excuse me, recruiters have. Gosh, man, like scouts have him as a good contact hitter. He has an all-field spray, pretty good defensively, but most likely will be a second baseman instead of the shortstop, especially with Mason Wynn blocking at this point. Scouting grades, and actually just to kind of put this in perspective, so anybody that doesn't understand MLB scouting grades, There is a scale from 20 to 80 where 20 is just like you don't belong in baseball. 80 is like upper pools level. Like 50 is going to be MLB average, 60 is plus, 70 is plus plus, or what people are calling now all-stars, so like an all-star talent level, and 80 again is the top, which is going to be like your superstar potential type player. So his for Weatherholt's grading scouting grades, he's got a 65 for hit, so that is right there plus with a little extra add on to it, not in the plus plus range. He's got 50 on power, so that's average. He's got plus speed at 60. He's got an arm that is average at 50. Fielding is 50 at average, so overall grade of 60, which is a plus type player. Just to put this in reference for everybody, Mason wins prospect rating here. 45 on hit, 50 on power, 55 on run, 70 on his arm, 55 in field, and 50 overall. So 10 points even less on the overall. So just so everybody can have a basic understanding of what that looks like. So OJ, what's your thoughts here though on Weatherholt?
Well, basically he could have gone 1 overall if he didn't get a hamstring injury.
Yeah, hamstring
I think
injuries,
he's had a couple hamstring injuries close together. That's the concern. That's why he fell to 7. But I mean, really, we got first overall talent at 7 overall, which is pretty impressive. It's the kind of prospect the Cardinals never have a chance at, and they're a pretty good developmental team. Like guys like this tend to go to like the Cincinnati Reds or the Pirates or something, and they screw them up because they don't know.
Athletic A's.
Yeah, or the A's, but the A's usually turn their guys into something and then sell them off at least.
I know, but, yeah.
But no. So I mean, I'm interested to see what the Cardinals development team can do with him because it sounds like apparently some amateur scouts said that he was the best, or some area scouts said he was the best amateur bat they've ever seen. So
yeah, I read that as well.
What I read is that he projects for at least average power in MLB, and he's got an incredible contact tool. And he doesn't got a great eye and all that stuff. So like, he sounds like he could be an absolute stud. And I also, I've heard people push back a little bit on this whole idea that he can't play shortstop. Like some people are saying he can't. He'll probably have to go to second, but he's playing with a nagging hamstring injury this year. And people have seen him. I've seen some video where it looked like he made a pretty strong throw from the hole in shortstop. So like information on him is incomplete yet, but he did have a great offensive season this year in college. And the point is, he probably will move pretty quick through the system as well. If he does really good, like if everything goes like amazingly, he could be up next year. But otherwise, you could expect him probably mid 2026. Like that's how good of a prospect this guy is. No joke. Yeah. Like everybody should be excited and tracking him, see what he's doing.
So speaking of those statistics, right? So with a hampered, hamstring, he only played 19 games, if I remember correctly, or something like that. Or maybe it might have been more than that. Regardless, like he missed a lot of time, obviously, because of those hamstring injuries. He batted .331. He had a .589 slugging, 8 home runs, 6 stolen bases, 30 RBIs. So that's pretty damn good, especially when you are missing a lot of time, right? And I definitely think he played more than 19 games. But regardless, you know what I mean? Like
last year or when?
Yeah, last year.
This past season, 2024, it shows. Yeah, I'm seeing he played in 36 games.
36, yeah. So I probably got that number mixed up with something else when I was writing it down
as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but again, 36 games, right? And he got 30 RBIs in 36 games. Pretty damn good. You know what I mean?
I would say, yeah.
Yeah, 30 runs as well. 30 runs, 30 RBIs. 41 hits, 472 on base percentage.
Yeah, I was about to say that's the other thing about it too. Strikeout rate.
Imagine if he didn't have the hamstring.
But that's what I'm saying. Right. I wonder if people don't underrate his power a bit, given that he was apparently hampered by this hamstring even when he was playing. Like, that would sap your power a bit, right? So,
well, absolutely, yeah.
What I read is that he really tightly groups his launch angle and everything. Like it sounds like he just has the most professional swing ever already. Like And what is he, like 21? So okay, let's see this kid go. I'm excited.
Yeah, I mean, he was like you said, there was a reason why he was projected number one overall. It's because I mean, um, imagine with obviously he wouldn't have landed with the Cardinals if it wasn't for the hamstring injury. So maybe it all worked out for us in the end. Obviously now if he's healthy, we'll see how he does in the minors for sure. But if he consistently shows he can continue to bat like that, you said what, over 36 games, and he batted what, 30 runs, 30. Yeah, what was it, 30 runs scored?
30 RBIs, 30 RBIs, and 30 runs scored.
Damn. Yeah. So in a team that's 331 as well at the time. Wow. So there you go. So that's pretty impressive. Yeah. I mean, definitely optimistic for sure. I'll say that part. Obviously, we'll have to see, does he stay healthy and is he continue to be consistent? But I'm optimistic. I think that this was a good pickup for us. I mean, it totally makes sense at the time, being that this was the 7th pick in the first round. Totally makes sense. Pick this dude up.
Yeah, it's absolutely worth the risk. Because if he just gets back to being healthy, stud player.
Absolutely. Yep.
And I do want to add a note too, as far as the hamstring injuries go. West Virginia plays on turf, so that can increase the odds of that kind of thing happening.
Correct.
Whereas obviously he's not going to wind up playing on turf in the MLB at all. So that'll help alone. But other than that, it might be something where you had to manage him real carefully, like maybe like a Byron Buxton type guy. That might be an outcome where maybe he can't play as much as you'd like him to, but when he is on the field, he's an absolute superstar,
Right.
Just can do it all. So
not to mention those stats are also coming from Big 12 baseball, and Big 12 baseball is pretty damn good. You know what I mean? Yeah. So like I think that people like SEC obviously gets a lot of recognition as they should
recently.
Yeah, exactly. But it's only been really in the past 5 years that the SEC baseball has really taken off. ACC has been decent, but it's really been the Big 12 that has been the dominant force when it comes to baseball for a very long time. It's just obviously, it's starting to become more popular now with the College World Series and obviously with the softball World Series as well. But no one's watching during the regular season, right? So I just want to put that in perspective as well. When you were playing in arguably, in my opinion, the best conference for baseball, but argumentally, people can make a play for SEC, whatever have you. But if you're playing in one of those divisions and you're still doing very well, that's telling you're facing the best pitching. Obviously, you're facing also the best defenders. So it really it shows that you have a more polished product, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
More of a competitor. So
yeah.
Well, Adam, did you have any additional thoughts around Weatherholt at this point?
I think you guys covered it pretty well, and obviously just wanted to chime in with, I'm feeling optimistic about it, and I think his development will be definitely watched pretty closely, as he continues to progress, and as long as it's as expected, I think he'll make a significant asset for the team for sure. So I'm looking forward to it, and hey, I think this is one of the highest draft picks we've had in quite some time. I was just looking.
Oh my God!
I was going to say the last one I can think of was J.D. Drew. So it was like a real high draft pick, and that was, you know what I mean. So takes me way back.
I mean, JD was pretty good for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. He was kind of, maybe I guess you could consider him. He had a pretty good career. That's what you kind of. What part of what's exciting about getting these like really high guys is because they're almost guaranteed to at least be a major league player. You know what I mean?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, they'll make it. They're definitely going to make it. They're making the appearance for sure.
Yeah, exactly. So.
Yeah, and I did read, it was pretty funny from one analyst that was talking about like the draft or whatever. And when it came to us, the analyst was like, "Yeah, this just feels like the Cardinals pick. Like they're just going to take the best that's available to them, and they get a good talent in Weatherholtz. Not necessarily a need, but they're just going to take the safest route." Which I'm like, yeah, like okay, I understand.
And because exactly
right, especially because of this talent.
Well, and why not? And you know what? If we end up saying, well, we don't really need him, we could end up trading him for something better where we need some other strength potentially.
Yeah.
If this guy's good,
100%.
why not put him on our team, or at least put it in our have him at our hand, so we have a couple aces in our hand, so we can play later on. So
Yeah.
it doesn't mean that this guy's going to be on our roster or whatever long term. He may not be, but that's okay. We can potentially leverage him.
Yeah, like you can't pass that talent up to draft for need in the MLB
only just for
draft.
need, because I'm like, what do you have in the future? You know what I mean?
Yeah, they're not even going to be there next year. Like there's going to be
Right.
most likely, especially if you're taking a lesser talent, they'll most likely be at least a couple years out. You don't know what you'll need by then.
Exactly.
Maybe the guy you thought was going to be your star shortstop had some freak thing happen, or you never know. You know what I'm saying? It's like, but
yeah, and I like the point that you just brought up, Adam. If he doesn't work out for us because he wants to play shortstop, or like say Nolan Gorman
second
and
or
Mason
whatever,
Wynn, like just absolutely turn it on, and there's no way we're moving either of those two. And obviously, this guy is a middle infielder through and through. All right, fine. Then you trade him for starting pitching. You can trade him for an outfielder. Yep. You know what I mean? Or trade him for a good first baseman. Paul Goldschmidt's contract's coming up. Something like that.
He seems athletic enough. You could convert him to the outfield. Probably that's the thing. Like if he can, they're gonna probably push him at shortstop as much as they can in the minors, because the whole idea is if you can play shortstop, you can pretty much play anywhere except catcher. So, it's one of those things where like once he gets closer to the majors, closer to being ready, then they can be like, okay, now we'll put you, we'll find a position for you, where we need you to be. Exactly. That's what they did sort of with Jordan Walker, but they waited.
I was just about to say
too long to start.
They waited too long. Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, they needed to definitely get that going much sooner, and that's the reason why Walker had such issues.
Yeah,
when he first came in, especially fielding.
Exactly, because it can be a little different skill set. The reason I say that is because there is more of a vision component you have to be concerned about in the outfield. You have to be able to track those balls a lot better, because it might look real small. I mean, most major leaguers have much better than average eyesight, but I wouldn't be surprised if like the real good outfielders that are at that level have like incredible eyesight. So it just makes it a lot easier for them to track the ball in the air and stuff.
Yeah, like a Jim Emmons. I mean, I felt like that dude had the like eagle eye vision, like when it came to tracking down balls, instinct, everything that came with it with Jim Emmons playing in center. You know what I mean?
And I read something a long time ago about they were calling it dynamic vision, which specifically related to tracking a moving object with like seeing that clearly and everything, right? So like that would obviously help with picking up the spin on a ball and stuff like that as well. But I don't know if that was like something that's actually a thing now, or if it was like a theory. But it was definitely something I read in the past. I always think about that. So,
all right, guys. Well, let's talk a little bit about the second pick that we picked up here. This was actually in the third round, since we did not have a second round this year. This was the 80th overall pick, round 3, in Brian Holiday. He is a right-handed pitcher out of Oklahoma State. Again, a fourth-year junior, just means that he's going into his senior year. A little bit of the scouting on him. He has a low 90s fastball, low 80s slider, and a mid 70s curveball. He has been touted as having great control and consistency. His scouting scores are: his fastball is 50, his curveball is 45, his slider is 55, changeup is at a 40, and it's very subtly used as his changeup. Excuse me. His control is a 55. They give him an overall score around 40. When I tried to look into this or whatever, I thought this was an interesting pickup in the third round. Obviously, we are definitely needing pitching. But I don't necessarily think that the 40 that they gave him is like a very fair score. As an overall, to me, this is more like he's more of like a 50, like an average, but he's not like, kind of be coming in, he's going to be amazing. But I think that he is going to be like back end of the rotation type of guy. OJ, you have any thoughts on him, at all?
I don't really know that much about him, but I think I do remember seeing they went under slot on him. So he's kind of a guy they took so they could save money for more people later, I think. So like in a 40 FV prospect is like that's not really good. You're probably looking for like 45, 50. If you're the Cardinals, that's what we're used to dealing with. 40 is kind of low. It doesn't mean he can't ever become something, but not really a great not forecasted to be a really, really much of anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was just interesting to me because, like, I mean, when I was reading the scouting reports on him, and a lot of people gave him a lot of like, he's got good control and consistency, but then you show the control is only 55, which is barely above what would be touted as MLB average. So I'm not terribly too certain, obviously, what he's going to be able to produce. But it is what it is, right? I mean, obviously, we need pitchers. Hopefully, he can turn into something, maybe even a bullpen arm. Who knows, right? So,
I mean,
Yeah.
it looks like that. His time in Central Florida there, it looks like he had a pretty good record there. Went 10-0 with 3.07 ERA, striking out 141 batters in 88 innings, and also contributed significantly to national championship there as well last year.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
he
and
did pretty well in Oklahoma State as well. So
yeah, last year, I mean, he was 7-3, had a 2.5 ERA, which is pretty decent in college, especially with the aluminum bats. 113 innings pitched, 3 complete games, which they do play the full 9, so that's pretty good. He only gave up 13 home runs, 128 strikeouts, and had a WHIP of 8.94, which is pretty damn good. So that's why I was just like, all right.
I
like,
think he had a pretty good amateur college career overall. I mean, like overall, it looks like he had that pretty good standout season there, obviously Central Florida, but that's also where he got named. It looks like NJCAA JUCO World Series Most Outstanding Pitcher too. I see. So he had a pretty good year there. It'll be interesting. I mean, obviously a good college career. We'll see how he works out here, but we'll see.
For sure. And the last guy that I want to talk about here is our 4th round pick at 109, Ryan Campos. He is the catcher out of Arizona State. He bats left, throws right. Again, going into his junior year. Scouting report shows that he's consistent contact swinger. He's got a good spray of the field. He's got pretty good defensive skills. But he has been very noted as having a great game calling abilities, very much like Yadier Molina, but obviously not to that level. His scouting report here is hit at 55, powers at 40, runs at 40, arms at 45, fielding is at 45, overall at 40. So to me, like, this is probably a safer pick if you're looking for a catcher, because obviously he doesn't really have he's a good contact hitter, but everything else is projecting to be underneath MLB average. But if you can kind of get away with that with good game calling abilities, then maybe he can turn into something. That's the one thing you can't really teach. You know what I mean? Is that leadership and that instinct to be able to know when to talk to your pitcher, when to calm them down, and how to go about it, right? And calling, obviously calling the game. But last year he batted 364. He slugged 610. 11 home runs, 5 stolen bases, 56 RBIs, and only 25 strikeouts. So,
that's why I want to jump in. I'd say overall, from a batting perspective, he's one of definitely the top catchers in college baseball for sure. He's proven pretty damn good, honestly. He's got a pretty good arm on him, and that's pretty good. He's pretty good at bat. He's got a lot of offensive skill, which that's great to see.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. So again, it's going to be interesting to see how any of these guys, pan out, and the rest of the giant list of people that we picked up. But it is it's going to be interesting. Obviously, we did pick up. I'm just going through it. 2 more. We picked up. Oh man, 3 left-handed pitchers in this draft, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 right-handed pitchers in the draft as well. So hopefully like one of those guys or 2 of them, more likely that would be awesome, can make it, out of the major league level. That would be amazing, but it's kind of hard to, find those. You're not going to find an Albert Pujols, every single year kind of thing, right? Round 13, all of a sudden he's going to be an absolute all-star. That's just not how it is. So, but yeah, so it kind of brings up the last question though that we have here for the Cardinals before we transition and talk about the Blues. We talked a little bit about this before, but I definitely want to get you guys' input now on it, especially with how the Cardinals have been doing. Are we buyers or sellers at the trade deadline? And Adam, I'm going to start with you on this one. Do you think we'll be buyers or sellers?
Yeah, I think looking at this, I think that we're going to wind up most likely with us being contenders and we're in that competitive spot, I think that puts us more around being a buyer at this point. That's just my opinion. I think that we have some options to be proactive about this, especially as we're getting towards the deadline. And I think a lot of this may be bolstering our pitching depth for sure, especially in the bullpen. Because honestly, adding another reliable arm and stabilizing the bullpen, I think is going to be important because the fact is they're inconsistent, and we continue to see that. So, yeah, I definitely lean towards being buyers. I mean, I think we still have a pretty solid core team, but I think with the right additions, we could actually make a possible playoff push. It'll be interesting to see, but I'm optimistic. Um, but yeah, I think the strategize, if we strategize just right and we get this, energy that we keep seeing in the team overall, and we give them that little bit of boost that they need, I think that it's possible that we could, possibly have a stronger finish this season than I originally thought.
Yeah, and that's the thing about it, man, is like I definitely thought coming into, especially after the first month, right? OJ, you kind of alluded to it. We had a just horrendous first month. And I really thought, I'm like, there's no way we're not going to be sellers at the trade deadline. And I was hoping to God it was not going to be Arenado because that's the only reason why I would pay to go see the Cardinals play right now. But would make sense, I guess, because he's going to be one of the only assets that we had that would have any value. But I definitely think that I'm leaning more towards that we're going to be buyers. I don't know what type of buyers will be. We're not going to be going out and like getting a big time talent. I don't think there's a lot of people that are right now. They're putting us with Bro Neal. Like I don't think that we're gonna go get Tyler O'Neill back from the Red Sox. I mean, he's having a great year, and I get it that the Red Sox are looking to move him. That's kind of well known knowledge right now in the MLB, but he's not gonna want to come back here. Why would we? You know what I mean? Like it's still Marmol, and that beef is still going to be there. Could we use him 110%? But there's no possible way I see him.
That's not going to jive.
Yeah, like it just wouldn't work out that well. But I'm not terribly too certain what's going to end up happening. But I think we'll make somebody. Or I mean, excuse me, we'll get somebody that's decent, but not like like, oh man, that moved the needle kind of thing. It's not going to be like a Juan Soto type or anything like that. So definitely don't be prepared for that. At least in my opinion. Maybe Mozeliak can kind of shock the world. He's done it before, but who knows? OJ, what's your thought here on it? Do you see us as buyers or sellers at the deadline?
I see us as buyers. Buyers of. Well, I'm not sure exactly. I feel like it'll be more on the try to plug the gaps side of things and not complete the farm too much, rather than go out and get anything big. If they do make a big trade, it'll probably be for like a stud starting pitcher and it'll probably be a trade of like Newt Bar or Gorman or some sort of package with them in it for some kind of like young cost controlled starting pitcher. You know what I mean?
Right, 100%.
So I could see them do something like that, but more than likely they get another starter that's more on the low end just to try and shore up the rotation and probably get good like mid leverage kind of reliever, and then maybe look for a right hand bat to play center field or something like that because we're very lefty heavy, and we could use somebody else out there. Dylan Carlson could maybe do that, but he hasn't so far. So you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think it's more likely to do that kind of thing, where they just plug the gaps they've got in their roster and see how far they can take it.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at as well. I mean, I think we're kind of all in the same standpoint. I don't think that we might get to the playoffs, and if you make the playoffs, anything can happen. We've seen that before, right? But it's just going to be really hard when you look at the Phillies, you look at the Dodgers, you look at these high end talents, right? But it's going to be interesting to see what happens there for the Cardinals the rest of the year. But we will see how it continues, right? So
yeah.
Alrighty, let's transition and talk about the Blues now. Really not much going on with the Blues besides the draft, which obviously just happened not terribly too long ago. We got a total, I think, of 9 picks out of the draft, right?
We did. We have 9 picks.
Yep, 9 picks. So we'll go ahead and just jump straight into it here. Our first round pick, we had the 16th overall pick, and we picked up Adam Jurek. He is a defenseman from the Czechoslovakia, or Czech Republic, as I should say. He is 6'3" and 178, which seems it's kind of weird to me. That seems like a really wiry, like length, like skinny body, right? Being 6'3" and 178 pounds. But people say that he is a very strong two-way player, and has great defensive awareness. He had 1 assist in 19 games last year, as he did have some injuries. But I did put this in parentheses as well, like 19 games, but he also was a -10 on the ice, which is kind of again I don't know what his team looked like, right? So that is what it is on that one. But Adam, what's your thoughts here on us picking up Jarek in the 16th overall pick?
Yeah, I mean, I think he definitely brings a commanding presence to the ice for sure. And like you mentioned, he's pretty overall high hockey IQ, which is great to see. And so
Yeah.
it'll be interesting, blending some of that physicality with that as well. But unfortunately, with that injury and whatnot, his potential really seems, I guess we'll wait to see how this all comes and plays out for sure. It's one of those type of things like we were just talking about before. It's like, I'm optimistic, but injuries have happened in the past. So how is he going to come through this as well? But I think overall, I'm seeing that he was ranked number 4 amongst international skaters by NHL Central Scouting, and overall, he seems like he'd be able to, add some skill to our defensive core, which, that is very promising, something we definitely need. So yeah, I'm excited about this pick. I am a little concerned about the size, but if the fact that he doesn't necessarily have to add the physicality per se, but the fact that he's smart on his feet, and and he's got that high hockey IQ, I think honestly that could probably benefit us more long term than just because we haven't always been known as being a really physical team to begin with. So that kind of plays into how we've been playing hockey to begin with. So I think he could maybe make a good fit for what the way we've been playing.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you bring up several good points about that. And again, that's what we need right now is definitely high Q and people that know the game for sure, especially if you're not going to be physical. You got to be able to be smart about how you attack.
And we definitely don't have enough of that out there on the ice. A lot of times we're screaming and saying, what the hell? Like, they're just not using their heads. Their heads aren't in the game. So,
yeah, OJ, what's your thoughts here on Jarek?
So Jurczyk, so I'm seeing 6'2", 168 pounds. So yeah, he's basically a kid still. So I see why the Blues drafted him, because he was going up against adults, like adult men in a men's league this past season. So his numbers maybe don't look that great, but he was facing much stiffer competition than some of these other guys that went higher, where they were playing their own age. I kind of like that, because it's kind of a similar philosophy to what the Cardinals do too. The Cardinals also like to draft guys that are playing up a level, or they're young for their level and stuff like that as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's one of those things where obviously the Blues see something that they can project in him, and they also figure that given that he's playing in a men's league, then somebody must trust him enough to do that, put him in there. So he's got to have somewhat of a head on his shoulders, right?
right.
And
the guy
I think
just turned 18, so
yeah, and he's 6'2", so he's not going to be 168 pounds forever. I guarantee you that.
they can add to it. Yeah, they can.
Yeah,
they can bulk him up. Yeah.
He ought to be able to add enough muscle to become a beast. So I think this is one of those ones where people are like kind of fell out of love with him. And I think it might have been a bit of prospect fatigue, because he was also one of those guys. Wasn't he one time a lot higher on a lot of people's boards, and then he kind of fell? Or am I
Yeah,
wrong about that?
yeah. No, you're right. But he wasn't like a top 10 pick. Like he was like hovering and like on the bubble of being a top 10 pick on most boards, but he was slightly
Gotcha.
higher than yeah.
Okay, but yeah, I do think sometimes people get prospect fatigue, and then when they don't see the gaudy numbers, and it's just like, oh
Mhm.
well, maybe this guy's not as good as I thought. I'm gonna, put this other hot name up in there instead. That's how it kind of
Yeah.
goes.
And it's really hard too, especially for defensemen in the NHL. Like it's to the point where I can't remember who said it. But man, I'm trying to remember. It was an old school guy. It might have been like Scott Stevens or something like that, who was more of a defensive defenseman. But they said that pretty much, teams want a center and then four wingers out there. You know what I mean? And that's kind of like how the game of hockey is turning into. And I mean,
Yeah.
I disagree with it obviously to that point, but that is true that a lot of teams are going for more of like the Alex Petrangelos, right? The offensive defenseman. That's what's getting drafted. That's what's being taught. And that's what defensemen, unfortunately, even at the high school level and lower, that's what they're working on. They're wanting to jump into the plays, and that's why scoring is going up as well. Because they're
Yeah.
not staying home, they're not staying, having their offensive or the defensive awareness, so to speak. So, I mean, it is what it is, right? So I think that if you can have a healthy balance of it, sure, great, awesome. But you're a defenseman first. You have to be able to rely on your offensive guys, your two wingers, and your center to be able to generate that, right? So,
Right. Absolutely.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah,
All right,
I
guys.
guess everybody wants a Kale McCarr or something, right? But
Yeah, 100%.
there's
But the
few
problem
of
with it
those.
is, yeah, exactly. Like, and Kale, I'm telling you right now too. The thing about Makar is like Makar is a phenomenal talent. He is absolutely
Yeah.
ridiculously good. But Makar in like 3 years, I'm not saying he's not going to be an all-star. He probably will be, but he's not going to be putting up these numbers because like teams are going to start preparing game plans specifically for him, and he doesn't have the help on the other side. That's the biggest issue that they're going to have with
Okay, so
or the Avs are going to have.
you think they're gonna they're gonna lose too many players around him to where he's gonna be able to be keyed in on more? Is that what you're saying?
100%. So
Okay.
like, essentially, yeah. So like, if I knew that a defenseman as a mostly winger in my hockey career, right? If I knew a defenseman was going to be pinching in a lot and was more of like again in a very aggressive a Makar type player, right? I stayed
Yeah.
higher in my zone, knowing that I'm marking him. And eventually, what's going to end up happening is I'm not going to give him lanes, and I'm going to be taking the puck away from him. He's going to have to either go around me or he's going to have to go through me. You ain't going to get through me that easily. I mean, even though I'm still a smaller guy than most defensemen. But what happens is in that situation, if you are now driving to the net and I am there, you're not going to get the open looks that you're used to. And most likely you're going to be passing the puck off. That can then all of a sudden lead to these guys who are used to getting those looks, used to getting those shots, getting very frustrated. So they start pinching in even higher and deeper. Then they're now, instead of me being more closer to the net and them holding the line, they're moving further in because they're looking to be able to break and be able to get into those the views for the net, right? If that makes sense, especially across the board. But if you're now even with me, once the puck breaks out, I'm gone. See you later. I'm going to use my speed that I know that you're most likely not going to be able to keep up with me. You know what I mean? And then if you
Mhm.
don't have a strong partner on the opposite side that's going to not only be smart in the offensive zone, but responsible if you get caught pinching up and they're now pinching as well to try to keep the puck in the zone, now you have all five guys right next to like the dot line, if that makes sense. Like if you have an invisible line close where the dots are in the offensive in the face-off zones, and now I guess in my defensive zone, if that makes sense. You have too
Yeah.
many
Yeah.
guys too forward, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
yeah, so that definitely happens, and game plans can happen along with that as well, where the center now instead of being more towards again the center ice or rovering between the post and at like the high slot or like again towards the dot lines and stuff like that, they start coming out higher to block off the lanes and pass. So now what we do is we take your greatest strength, which is that defenseman being the quarterback and being able to either pass it down deep or take shots in the net and generate chances and stuff like that. Well, you're not going to be able to pass if the center's playing high, and you're not going to be able to get through a winger that can play responsible defensively. It wasn't the greatest defensive, winger, but I did a good enough job that, I'm going to be able to make that play, 8 times out of 10 or 9 times out of 10, depending, right? So then now it's going to frustrate that guy, and we're taking him away completely. But you also need to, that being said, I would have to be on the same page with the center and so on and so forth, right? So, but that's the thing about it is it's going to be interesting to see the next like 10 years of hockey if that kind of trend continues, or if it's like, okay, this is where it's at, like this is the prime like defensive scoring, and it kind of comes back down because people are going to continue to get beat, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like I wonder if you won't see teams more starting to play like almost a low block like soccer, where they're just gonna like collapse and then just try and cherry pick at the opposite blue line. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
just try
100%.
suffocate everything down low and in the slot, and then just get the puck and launch it to a forward.
So it's so funny because I can tell you, like many times watching games, and you have Tarasenko was notorious for cherry picking, right? Like he's holding the line as much as he possibly can. And everyone's just like, he needs to get down there and get dirty. And like, first and foremost, that's not what the Blues want from him. So like, he is sticking to the game plan. They want him to be a shooter. Shooter's got to shoot, right? Now, if he's going to get that puck and he is now even or just on a one-on-one situation, I'm taking those odds with Terry saying, shit, we saw his first game in the NHL. Again, that was the game against the Detroit Red Wings. And most people probably don't remember that. I think it was his second goal because he scored 2 goals that game. That was like the day that Sam Usual died, and we scored 6 goals and beat the Detroit Red Wings 6-0. He literally was on the right boards, right from our defensive zone. He was on the right boards, playing right next to the defender, and the puck is coming in. The defender puts his stick down to try to get him away. Tarasenko waited, stick lifted him, and just took off right after the puck. Got a nice breakaway and scored. That is like what Tarasenko can bring to the table. If you have a score that can shoot, that's what you're going to do, right? So that 100%, OJ, to your point, yeah. If you have a guy that can turn the game on a dime, then yeah, they're gonna play higher, and you have the other 4 guys kind of pinching down a little bit, so to speak. And it also in that point is also it's kind of like soccer in a sense where if you have it like a line, yeah, the line controls offsides or whatever on the back line, right? For your like your fullbacks, so to speak, just to put in generality terms. But you can also keep them honest by having your striker stay next to them and then continue to try to make runs, if that makes sense, to try to get behind them. So eventually the defenders are going to like not push up as hard because they can't. Because now if you continue to have runs or show that, it's just asking questions of the defense, right? So it's kind of similar in hockey. So to your point, yeah. But the problem with that is you have very elite goalies now, and you just don't have that many like pure shooters that are going to be able to do stuff like that. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
there's only like right now like maybe 20 guys that can do that in the NHL on a consistent basis, at least. I mean, sometimes they can come out there, but a lot of it, if people think that getting on a breakaway is the easiest thing to do in hockey because it's just you versus the goalie, I can tell you it is completely different than a shootout. Shootout, you go into it a different mentality. You know what you have to do. At that point, to me, it's closer to 50-50, or if you have a good shot, it's like a 60-40 in favor of the attacker, right? The person shooting the puck. But on a breakaway, that's why like you see like a guy that's historically really good at shootouts sometimes just look like a deer in a headlight because they're trying to process so much, and they're like, where's the defender? Like, am I in? What do I do? And they end up kind of just making like one move, and then like, the goalie just kind of wait for him because there's so much more distance as well that they're trying to cover at that point in time. They can't slow down. They typically have to go real fast, and they're just trying to pick out one spot, maybe try to make a move and break down the defender, right? So that's what I mean by that. Sorry, way over explanation, but yeah.
Well, there you go. Okay.
Anyways, sorry about that.
Should be.
Yes. Anyways, let's get talking here. The next pick that we had was also another defender. This guy's from Minnesota. His name is Colin Rolfe. He's 6'5", 226. So this dude is huge, right? A very big guy. He's also very young. What people are saying is he's a shutdown defender. And like he's going to be a good pairing for like somebody, if you could do it with like a Colton Parayko, a guy that's not necessarily going to have offense, because that's what they're stating is he needs more of the offensive skills. He did have 8 goals and 58 assists, excuse me, in 57 games. But that's being, I mean, that's obviously playing at lower levels, right? So I think that if we can get him to be a little bit more like not necessarily pinch in, but be smarter about offensive play and work on your passing, he could turn into a very good prospect for us. Adam, what's your thoughts on Ralph here in the second pick in the 48th overall?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for being, 17 years old, and that,
Yeah.
let's just call it NFL, sorry, NHL ready, in that sense that he's, has a
NHL size
pretty,
at least.
yeah, the
Yeah.
size, I guess, or, he's ready to go. He's got the overall size and I guess the strength to really, show up on the ice. And, I think, that'll be interesting to see for sure. But yeah, but obviously focus mainly on the offense here. I see here posted 66 points overall, like you were mentioning, goals and assists and whatnot over 57 games. And obviously that was, prep level at that point. But, we'll have to see how he develops. But I think I'm excited about seeing a defenseman, of that size ready to go, especially so young. Um, I think he's got a lot of potential. That'll really make a promising addition to our defensive core for sure. So, yeah, I really am going
And
to be
so
paying
I
attention to his development for sure. Going, and because I think he'll play a big impact in the coming years for sure.
I saw an interview with him where
Mhm.
he was stating that he was joking. Well, at least he said it kind of jokingly, but I think he might have been serious that they said that he was still growing. And I'm like, man, if he could somehow make like 6'7", that's a huge ass defender, right?
Oh my
I mean, you're
God,
right
that'd
up
be
there with
insane.
Colton Parayko. So
Yeah,
I
Yeah,
think this is a decent pickup at the second round. You know what I mean? OJ,
for
what's your
sure.
thoughts here?
yeah. I was just looking at that 6'5", 227 at 18.
Yeah.
Good for you, buddy. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
but
I
yeah,
stopped growing after 15. My, my five
what
foot 10 frame.
what
Anyways.
I'm reading on Elite Prospects is that he's a physical defenseman, and they say that he is an absolute force defending the rush. Plus defensive skater, is always gapped. He fluidly pivots and kills opponents on angle. Dude, we need defensive defensemen on our team. I love
Yes.
having.
Yes.
This is a great draft pick. Great draft pick in the second round. Because this might be the guy of the draft. You never know.
And here's the thing about
It'll
this
be.
too. When go ahead, Adam. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say it'll be interesting too, mixing his, obvious more defensive defenseman type, skill with that of Jurek as well, who is a
Yeah.
smaller guy, but is, more, hockey, more, he's smart on his feet, I should say. It'll be
Mhm.
interesting to see, those guys, potentially playing together and how those come together from a defensive perspective,
Yeah. I was gonna say, like, reading that description, it almost makes me think that some people might get to see what would happen if Colton Parayko had more of a mean streak to him. 'Cause he
Yeah.
sounds like
Yeah.
a Colton Parayko kind of player. Like, sounds like he basically skates like a gazelle. He's huge, but they also say
Mhm.
he's physical. So if he's like Colton Parayko plus throws his weight around, like that could be a fun player to watch. So
And I'm telling you right now, like, and this was the point I was going to make. I really wish that Berube could have coached this guy. You know what I mean? Because Berube is a grinding, like we are going to beat the hell out of this team, and I really wish that Berube could have been the coach for him because I think that it would have been, you're going to get that mean streak. I'm going to take your strengths, which is obviously your defensive awareness and stuff like that, and I'm going to teach you how to like really fully utilize that. You know what I mean? I think that Ralph is a name that we are going to potentially see playing for the Blues at some point for sure, but I think that he could potentially be a real good shutdown defender.
yeah, I will say also that I don't see a reason why Bannister, or I haven't seen evidence yet why Bannister couldn't also do that. So just
You're right, but I just think that Bannister has a certain style. It's not too dissimilar, from Berube, but I think that Berube really forces and kind of pushes that home, if that makes sense. That's all I was kind of getting at.
Sure. I get you.
Yeah. Looking at the third guy, which is another defenseman that we have from the OHL. This is Lucas Fisher. He's 6'3", 182, so he kind of fills out a little bit more the profile of Jerk. He is more of a defensive defenseman with strong skills. His 6 goals and 28 assists in 68 games looks pretty good, but from what people show, it's not looking great on the offensive side. He really needs to work on shooting ability. He really needs to be able to learn how to pass well and stuff like that. OJ, do you have any takes here on Lucas Fisher?
No, not really. I kind of don't pay that much attention once you get past like really the first round even. But like
this was the last guy that I had notes on because I read a little bit of a report on him, but there's really not much to like even talk about since again he is a defensive defenseman that doesn't really even have any offensive play. I mean, you know what you're getting out of him. That's the one thing that analysts were saying. At least you know what you're getting out, or getting with him, right? Is you're getting a defensive defenseman. You are getting a guy that is going to be able to play defense at a high level, or should be able to play defense at a high level. Now, can you skate? That's going to be the biggest thing about it. You know what I mean? So
I'm reading here that he apparently is known for his quickness and agility on the ice. So
yeah,
nice. See, I didn't even see or read any of that. So yeah,
they said he has deceptively powerful long strides, catching up to and stealing the puck before they can react. That also sounds a lot like Colton Parayko.
Yeah, it does.
Man, so I'll tell you guys a real.
Yeah.
I will tell you guys a real funny story about that because obviously we've mentioned a lot of this with Colton Parayko and just like the powerful strides, right? So when the Winter Classic came to St. Louis, I was still working for the Blues, and we had the little skills competition that they had, and they had the celebrity game and all that stuff, right? So they did a hardest shot competition. And I can't even honestly remember who else was in it, but Colton Parayko was in it. I was on the ice because I was one of the guys that would be feeding him pucks, you know what I mean? To go up there and shoot the puck. I felt the entire ice move when this guy got in stride. I'm not even joking. And I'm not like, I'm standing like at the blue line. He's making a run to the puck at the blue line to hit it, or it might have been a little bit further in. But essentially, I'm like, that's, how I was at. I'm not joking. You can feel the entire ice move when like Colton Parayko got up. I mean, that's just a giant man moving, you know what I mean, as fast as he could. And obviously he won the hardest shot competition because the dude has just got a ridiculous shot. But yeah, it was pretty funny. And I remember 2 of the Blue Crew girls were like behind my boss who was holding up the radar, and his puck, he even said it. He came over and was joking. He was like, I'm going to go scare the hell out of those girls. And this was his 3rd shot because he had already won the competition at that point in time. So he purposely did not hit the net. He hit above it and just drilled the glass. Both these girls, I'm not joking, they just duck and covered. Like they were in skates and they like dove out of the way. And my boss who had played hockey it was standing there like look at him like shaking his head like, come on now. Like you guys know there's glass here. Like that ain't gonna happen. But he was laughing so hard like Parayko because he knew what he was doing. But I mean, I don't blame them for doing that, I guess, because that's a hard ass shot coming straight at your face. You know what I mean?
Well,
that dude he's a monster. I mean, you can feel him moving on the ice. Like it was crazy. I've never felt like that before where I felt a dude like skating and I could feel it in the ice. But anyways, yeah. Alrighty. So just some quick notes about the rest of the draft here. So in the 3rd round, we got Andre Kos, left winger. This was our first offensive guy. We took a left winger from Czech. 6'3", 176 pounds. He got 3 goals and 8 assists. He did have a lot of injuries this past season. Also in the 3rd round for the 95th pick, we had Adam Jerko, I think is actually another Czech Republic guy. He is a center, 6'5" and 197. It looks like a string bean because he's only 197 and 6'5", but he looks like he's going to be a pretty decent center just from physical abilities. He's got 23 goals and 24 assists in 54 games in the WHL, so that's pretty good. And now not the Women's Hockey League, the original one. Round 4 pick, we got Thomas Mursic. It's a weird last name, Mrsic. Like if you look at that, you're thinking that's going to be like from Russia or something like that. No, he's from Canada. He's a center from the WHL as well. 6'0", 170 pounds. Had 23 goals, 39 assists in 63 games. He also had 32 penalty minutes. In the 5th round, we picked up William Mick Isaac. What a last name. Defenseman from the WHL, 6'3", 192 pounds, 6 goals, 21 assists in 67 games. In the 7th round, we had 2 picks there. At the 209, we picked up Antoine Duran. He is a center from the QMJHL, 6'1", 190, 11 goals and 15 assists in 68 games. And again, the other pick that we had was only 2 picks later at 211. That was Matrev Korofsky, I think. Korofsky. He's Russian, so I'm probably butchering that name. He's a center from Russia, 6'2", 198 pounds, 20 goals and 18 assists in 51 games. So I'm going to start with you here. What's your overall thoughts on the Blues draft this past season?
Well, I mean, obviously, one of our areas that we needed to focus on was definitely our defensive core and whatnot. So I'm happy to see that they took that seriously and that they're, making some strides there to, have some positive impact long term, no doubt. So I think overall, I'm optimistic, I guess, about the overall draft. I don't really know, a lot depth wise beyond the first couple guys that we talked about.
Yeah.
But, so is it going to move the needle significantly? That's yet to be seen, but I am at least optimistic that we are focusing, though, like I said, on the defensive core, and I think that those guys are going to be good picks for us long term. So, so I'm satisfied, I guess.
Yeah, that's kind of what I feel as well. Like I think we scratched some of the itches that we had, and especially when you look at where we need some help. It's not like, oh my God, this is mind-blowingly good, but I think I'm optimistic, especially on the D line, right? I think that looks good. What we got, hopefully, I think that there's going to be more veterans, especially on the offensive side of the game, that you're going to be able to find, right? OJ, what's your takes on the draft?
I would say I like how we drafted some defensive defensemen. I guess it's kind of a defensive heavy draft a little bit, at least near the top, which I don't mind because I think what happened was I really do think that Armstrong thought he heard all the talk about the league's going to go skill and they're going to, start calling penalties in the playoffs and all that shit. And I think he bought into that. And that's why he got Justin Falk, Torrey Krug, and you're drafting Scott Perunovich and all these little small, fast defensemen. But it turns out that that's all a lie, and you really do still need big dudes with long reach if you're going to play any kind of defense in this league. And so I think it's kind of like we need to get some of those guys back into the system.
Yeah, I almost kind of need to reset a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. So I liked it. I like how the draft went for him pretty well. So
for sure. All right, guys. Well, let's transition here to the last topic that we have, and that is talking about St. Louis SC. We haven't talked about them for a minute, and for damn good reason. They are 4-10-10 for 22 points. They are 1-1-6. So that is 1 win, 1 draw, and 6 losses since our last session. They're now 13th in the West, so that's 2 positions worse than they were last session. They are 24 points behind LA Galaxy for the lead in the West. For anybody that does not know, that's 6 full games. With this point in the season, it's going to be pretty hard to match. We are 28th in the MLS. And for anybody that does not know, there's only 29 teams in the MLS. So we have unfortunately dropped 7 positions since last session. We are 28 points behind Miami for the lead. This has been a real difficult season, but Bradley Carnell was fired, our coach. That obviously, this is a very difficult one to talk about because of the fact that it's only the second season. But we had such a good team last year, such high hopes for continued success here. OJ, I'm going to start with you here on this one. Did you believe that Carnell deserved to be fired? Do you think that it was fair? What's your thought process on that happening?
Well, at the time I didn't, and I'm not sure I do still. Here's the thing. Early in the season, this team looked better than they did last year. And actually, for the vast majority of this season, they looked very close to being a dominant team. And then pretty much all of their starters got injured. They've been losing guys as time goes on. But to me, what really broke their back, what turned the season for the negative in a big way was when Celio Pompeu went down. And he's going to be out, 9 months, I think they said. So he won't even be back at the beginning of next season. So it's just an awful injury, obviously, for him to go through, but it also really screwed the club. And then Kyle Hubert went to Canada, so he was gone for a while. And of course, they went deep in Copa America, so we couldn't use him. I mean, there's a point where I think that game we played Colorado, I don't think we had any actual center backs on the roster. We've just been laughably shorthanded. We're still currently playing guys from MLS Next Pro that probably aren't quite ready to be up, honestly. But so it looks pretty brutal when you have all backups playing, essentially.
All right.
But the good news is, we are, Klaus will be back eventually. And they got some new signings that should at least help boost the performance a little bit. I mean, I'm not going to say that the playoffs are in the question anymore. I mean, I'm not sure if they've lost so much ground that they can't climb back into it. But I also remember Kansas City was pretty bad last year too, and then somehow snuck into the playoffs. So it is possible, probably still, but they would need to turn it around pretty quick.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's especially in the game of soccer. I mean, anything can happen, but we definitely need some cohesion. It just doesn't look good, and it's not fun to watch anymore. I mean, last year even the games we lost, you just felt like we were in it, and had a good opportunity.
Yeah.
It just does not feel that way anymore.
We can't
at
win on
all.
the road at all.
Well, yeah, because everything that goes wrong can basically right now. It's kind of like the Cardinals 2023 season is what it feels like a lot. It's like every time, and then, every time you score a goal to go ahead, the refs take it away from you. It's just like, okay, this is just how the season is going to be, I guess.
Yeah, at some point that also weighs into you as well. It's just like, damn, you can't buy a goal, and then you get more in your head about it. And it's just
I definitely think a lot of them are in their heads about it. And I just realized I didn't even really answer the question all the way about Bradley Carnell. What I was trying to come around to eventually was that I think the injuries play a lot more into the poor performance than anything Carnell was doing. But at the same time, now all this shit's coming out about locker room bullshit happening. And I don't know if it's because the losing started or if it's been going on since the beginning.
Yeah, but, and it was covered up because we were winning, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, obviously, it seems like things went to shit as soon as we started facing a little adversity, which also is not a good sign. It's not a good look for Bradley Carnell either, because I mean, as a coach, I would expect you to kind of be controlling the way your guys' attitudes are and stuff, at least the best you can, right? I mean, so anyway, maybe he did need to go. I don't know. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, that's kind of where I think even everybody that's a fan of the City SC at this point is kind of feeling. Adam, what's your takes here? I mean, did you feel that the firing needed to happen?
I think it's a bit complex. So obviously, on one hand, you could say that it was necessary because of overall, poor performance, our inability to find, consistent form. I think it, people would say that pointed to a need, for change. And that, of course, means leadership, and maybe a new coach could bring in some fresh ideas, maybe some renewed energy, maybe turn things around for the season for sure. And to OJ, your point about the loss of, some key players and, series of injuries, that undoubtedly impacted our overall performance. And I think it definitely makes it really hard for Carnell to really implement his strategies, effectively for sure.
Or even mix things up, right? Think about that.
Right.
Because you have a bunch of new guys trying to get him to mesh it all, so you can't really do
hard to do
tactical changes and shit when they can't even do the base shit easily. You know what I mean?
Right. And so and to that point as well, so people I think in America really don't understand how hard it is like coming. So even like if you're a substitute, like say coming in the 78th minute, there's 12 minutes left in the game. It's really hard to get to the speed of the game. You're stretching out on the sideline and stuff like that, but then running with the defender or like trying to shut down a guy who's like just is been touching the ball a lot and stuff like that, like trying to defend Messi. It's really difficult. You might be more fresh. You might have more like pop, so to speak, but it doesn't mean that you're locked in and that like you're good to go. So imagine that though for the entire season, especially when it comes to game plans and stuff. So I think that your point's 100% on. Yeah.
So yeah, and building a successful team, especially one like us that we're dealing with those significant injuries and the loss of crucial players, it definitely requires patience and stability.
Yes.
And then having changes in coaching staff can also lead to further instability and potentially hinder our long-term progress as well.
Absolutely.
Some people would say that we were on the right path. He was on the right path amongst, that we had some of the team struggles, but, I guess it was unfortunate circumstances rather than poor coaching potentially. But, I don't know. I mean, ultimately, time will tell. If we're going to continue to struggle, obviously it indicates that there's a deeper issue beyond the coaching position for sure. But
which we have continued to struggle.
Well,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, I'd argue things took a turn for the worse because they were mostly drawing still until they fired Carnell, and then now they just lose games.
Again, so the last 8 games, 1-6. You know what I mean? So
if that's the case, then since we're not seeing any immediate improvements or better results, then it seems to me that the firing would be not really justified. In my opinion. So
yeah, absolutely. Because that was the reason they gave in the press conference too. And maybe they're just trying to cover up the dysfunction if there really is a bunch of dysfunction in the locker room. Maybe they're just trying to cover that up. But the reason they gave was saying, "Oh well, we're worried we're going to slip out the playoffs." Like, well, things have only gotten worse, dude. So
So it's like, well, that's not a good turn, So that indicates to me that it's definitely, like I said, a deeper issue for sure.
Yeah.
So I don't think they've given up enough time, considering all the unfortunate crappy hand that was dealt. I don't think they gave him enough time to really prove himself to try to turn things around.
100%. And like again, I think that they
short of a period of time.
Yeah, I think it's so funny to me. It's just like, okay, so all this stuff happens, right? And then you're gonna immediately fire Bradley. But like all this stuff happens when it comes to injuries and stuff like that to Marble, who needs to be or who needed to be fired. You go, oh, well, he had to deal with all these injuries and us. Come on, man! Like it's just so funny how that works. But yeah,
what I'll say is I think that it's more extreme for what City faced. Because like that Colorado game I was talking about, I think they had like 3 of their regular starters start that game. So like that's 8 guys that normally don't start for you that are going into Colorado to try and win you a game. You know what I mean? Like that's pretty brutal. I mean, I don't usually, because every team faces injuries, right? But we had a real bad stretch there, and we're still in it. To tell you the truth, like because I mean, like Knut Thorson doesn't seem to be like really a 1-for-1 replacement for Klaus because he doesn't seem to conduct the press as well. So it's just one of those things where we're really still hurting from missing some key players. But yeah, I don't know. I still watch the games because I really do feel like something good can happen still any night, on any given night. I don't know. They played Seattle pretty well. I mean, they actually were up on the XG going into half at least that I saw. Even though they were down a goal, they were still like dominating almost for as far as the run of play goes. So like they have it in them to still play well. Like I wouldn't, and they still have been playing hard. There's only been like one game where I feel like they like gave up. I think it was maybe a game or 2 ago where the players were like just looked like, I think it was the game before Seattle. They just looked like absolute shit. Like they're just trying to fucking get done with the season, But then they came out and played well against Seattle. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But.
All right, guys. Well, let's go ahead and head to our sign off here. Adam, would you like to tell the good listeners how they can interact with the show, ask questions with our
Yeah.
socials?
Check us out on facebook.com/the hometown losers. That's spelled LOUSERS. Or check us out on x.com/hometown losers. We'd love to hear from you guys. As always, post any questions, comments, feedback, and be sure and give us a like and share.
All righty. OJ, would you like to tell the good listeners what the game of the week is going to be?
Well, aside from the Braves series, the Cardinals are going to be played on. We'll go with the City Sporting Kansas City game, and that's going to be, I believe, in Kansas City. But that's on Saturday at 7:30. So, they're also a bottom-ranked team, like you were saying, Josh.
Yeah.
How City is second from last. Well,
they're last.
If we win, we can. They're not last. San Jose's last.
Oh yeah, my bad. I looked at it wrong.
Kansas City's above us now, but I think if we beat them, we can shove them back down below us.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, because they got 23 points. Yeah,
it's the game of the week. Plus, you just don't want to lose to Kansas City. They're just a garbage organization all around. Like, I just absolutely no respect for anything they do or have ever done. So, you just can't lose that game. So that's your game of the week right there.
There you go. Thanks for that, OJ. And finally, for tonight, we are going to end with the epic this week's
Stat Blast.
There it is.
Oh, I love the delay. Yeah,
we've had one of these. We had a lot of anticipation on that one. So.
Yes. And that reminds me of because obviously we haven't done a show since the 4th of July. It reminds me of those like fireworks. You're like, is it gonna go? And you're like, oh, it's gonna go. Like you start walking to it, and you're like, oh shit.
Yeah. That's always the worst.
It was not a dud. It finally blew up, and it did not think to blow up on our face. So back it up, Terry. It's over to you now, Josh.
All right, guys. So I got a crazy one for you, right? This is
shit.
I didn't even know about this, but this is just a crazy statistic. Okay, so we all know Greg Maddux is just a ridiculously awesome pitcher, right? I mean, guy I think he was one of the last guys that has gotten 300 wins, which is something that is most likely not going to be happening in MLB baseball ever again, really. It may, but it's just going to take a long time. Anyways, Greg Maddux in his career faced 20,421 batters. Okay, so that's 20,421 batters. That's a lot of batters. Only 310 batters in his entire career ever got to a 3-0 count.
What?
Oh, by the way, 177 of those were intentional walks.
Jeez.
You're shitting me.
So I'm going to put this in a better perspective for you, okay? So just, I mean, obviously there's a lot going on here. I'm going to break this down just a little bit for you, okay? So again, he threw to 20,421 batters in his career. Only 0.006% of those batters ever saw 3-0 count, not including intentional walks. That just shows you how dominant of a control freak Maddux was in the pitcher's box.
Yeah.
Wow.
Supernatural.
That's nuts.
Dude, just unreal. I saw that and I'm like, you got to be shitting me. There's no fucking way. 20,000 batters and only, damn near 2,500, really. I mean, he was like 80 away from 2,500 batters that he faced. And only 310 of them got to a 3-0 count. Like, oh my God. It's crazy.
Yeah,
that's
dude,
crazy.
That's nuts.
Yeah. So anyways, that's all I had for that one because I just thought that was just ridiculous. But it's a very cool stat blast for sure.
That is a pretty awesome stat blast.
Yeah.
Agreed.
All right, guys. Well, as always, I appreciate you, OJ, Adam. I hope you had fun. It's great to be back. I appreciate you guys. We appreciate the listeners as well. Make sure to reach out to those socials that Adam mentioned to interact with the show. Definitely ask questions. We love doing the mailbag segment, so we would love to hear from our listeners here. But until next time, we will see you here on the Hometown Losers podcast. You have a great night, everybody.
The
This is OJ, and I wanted to thank you guys for listening to the equivalent of 3 dudes sitting at a bar talking about sports. We'll catch you next week on the Hometown Losers.